everybody, and welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live video series. And joining me today to share the stories behind the 10 books which influenced her the most on her life journey is human potentialist, soul mentor, mystic explorer, and undoubtedly the best wisdom gathering and adventures in consciousness guide that I've personally ever encountered. For those of you who do not yet know who Jennifer Evanko is or anything about her work, she's been following the call of her passion for personal growth and human potential, delving into life's greatest mysteries and learning from some of the world's foremost spiritual teachers for more than 35 years. Her quest has taken her around the world to ancient sacred sites, renowned mystery schools, teaching centers at the leading edge of personal transformation, studying metaphysics, meditation, integrative medicine, and the mysteries of consciousness and transformation. Jennifer learned ancient energy healing techniques in Brazil. She studied at the Mystery Schools of Damanhur in Italy, and she trained at the Chopra Center University in California with Deepak and David Simon and davidji, who was on this venue about just before Christmas, I believe. She also spent 4 years traveling with and being personally mentored by one of the greatest pioneers of the human potential movement, Dr. Jean Houston, where she learned transformative techniques and the mysteries of the imaginal realm before finally embracing her dharma as a spiritual healer and teacher. And I can tell you that from creating powerful meditations and signature group wisdom gatherings to specialized adventures in consciousness programs, Jennifer guides people through the uncharted territories of the meta realms to access the soul's wisdom and discover their own personal place of healing. Jennifer Evanko, welcome.
Well, thank you, Sandie. Amazing to listen to you just flow and speak like that.
I wonder who is that person?
Exactly. Who is that person?
Yeah, it's interesting when other people read out our bios and we go, oh yeah, I forgot I did that. So it's good to have you here. And I am going to start with our usual first question is, what was it like for you having to pick just 10 books out of all of the many books I know you've read over the years?
Wow. I mean, that was quite a process, because I think I had about 30 books on my shelf at one point on my desk, just stacked, ready to go through thinking, oh, this is my best one. No, this is my best one. And it was really tough to get it down to the 10. And as I said, and when I wrote you, that I can't guarantee that these are my 10 favorite or best, but they are 10 important ones in my journey.
So was that the criteria at the end? You know, it has to be how important they were on that journey.
You know, as I did this process, it took me quite a long time to do it. And I was really reliving the books as I was looking at them, even not really remembering maybe all the pages or what was said inside, but where I was when I was reading the book. And so I was remembering some of the books were when I was before I had kids and what I was doing in that time of my life. And others were after years of raising kids and now on my spiritual journey more. And so the process of actually where I was in my life kind of told me which books to choose as well, because some of the books, if I read them now, they're not as powerful to me now. But boy, when I read them, they were life-changing.
So that moving through that process and recovering some of those memories, you know, was there anything notable that happened? Did you know, have any real big epiphanies?
Yeah, there was, you know, it's review. It's a life review in a sense, right? I mean, you start, especially, you know, picking up in my early 20s is where I started in these books. And where I was as a 20-year-old, with ideals of what life was supposed to be like. I knew where I was going and what I was doing and how to be successful. I was a business major. That person, to connect with her, and then move through on with these books and see how I changed and how I grew. And, you know, when you read a book for the first time back in your 20s, I was of the mind of a college student. I was reading books for the messages that other people could tell me about the book. You know, it was such a surface read, right? Because I was so excited about everything. I was just on the surface on everything. And then I'd read the book later and years later, and you start going a little bit deeper, and your own understandings, your own life experiences come out now in the books. So, you know, it was quite a journey to figure out which books and what the life, you know, the epiphanies I had were about myself, not, you know.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that I never expected when we started this, is that, you know, because many people say the same thing, that actually going back is a life review. You know, it's like a my life in books kind of thing. And they get to see how far they've come. And that in itself is a gift for them.
You know, it's interesting. It's how far you come through the books that you think happened in your pathway along the way. But then you go to that next level and think about synchronistically how certain books come to you, and I can read it one way, and who you are, you read it another way, but I pick up a thread that keeps my soul evolving in a certain direction. And that's another thing I found as I looked at these books. The ones that came about the universe, about the cosmos, about frequency and energy. Those were the ones that seem to pop for me right now to review.
Yeah, it's a much bigger experience than I ever intended it to be, and I'm delighted that it is, because that, you know, it takes a while for people to have to do this, so it's good that they get a reward out of it. So let's start with book number 1, which is one that we get over and over again, the Bhagavad Gita. So tell us what it was about this particular book, and if you can remember, you know, the impact it made on you at the time.
First of all, I want to applaud you that you pronounced it correctly.
That's probably the first time I've had to say it so often.
We often say Gita, the Gita. You know, when I first read it, I was just practicing TM, Transcendental Meditation, and Maharishi had his version of the Gita, and it was like everybody had it. It was a cool thing to have, and everybody would read it, and it was a conversation piece. I would go to these talks with different people, and we would talk about the Gita, and you know, I just loved it. I was so fascinated. I was new to this world of spirituality and consciousness. And so it was a very innocent, young, impressionable me that was reading that book the first time. And, you know, I've always loved mythology and stories. And so I was taking it in some ways very literal, what the story was and the lessons, and using it as a book to socialize, to connect with other people now. I think I mentioned that I've come to this book 3 times, 3 specific different times in my life. And each time it's been a class, you know, required reading for a course. First was the Maharishi. Then it was years later when I was with Deepak Chopra, and we were doing the training to become an instructor. We had to read it again. And this time I was a mother, I'm a professional businesswoman. I had a lot of life experiences already. And I put myself into the stories, like the things that Arjuna was coming up with, that he was facing, I could relate to and understand. And they became more interesting. It wasn't just a surface story, a fancy myth. And so I myself had stepped into the story a little bit. And then the 3rd time I read it was just last year, and it was more with esoteric studies. And this, you know, if you look at the Gita, there are so many different translations. And when you get closer to the original translation, there's some esoteric meanings in there. And the meanings of, for example, the names that you call the gods and what it does to you. It was just a whole nother level of mystery and understanding in the third reading. It's a powerful book. And even at that, going back now and just reading the story and understanding the concepts, the values that you can have in your life, that's so valuable.
And you summed it up really well in your written description when you said a perfect example of life's spiraling journey where each turn deepens meaning and understanding. And this is something that is a quintessential part of your work, this spiral, because it's something that you're always working with, isn't it? You're taking people deeper. So they're in the same place, but they're at a completely different level of understanding, different layer of it, just going round and deeper and deeper. Yeah.
I'm fascinated with consciousness and the fact that we are so complex and we have so many different layers. And we're always, especially in this kind of work with spirituality, we're trying to attain that flow and that deep, beautiful level of bliss or high consciousness. And yet, at all the levels of the spiral, there's treasures and there's things to be found. At every level of consciousness, when you approach a book, you access something very important for yourself. So it's that we want to, it's natural as humans, we want to get to the end, we want to arrive. But that whole journey, that spiral is so valuable. And that's what I teach in Adventures in Consciousness. We continue to experience some of the same meditations, the same experiences, but it's who you are and the collective you're with that allows you to juice that experience for something new.
Well put. So book number 2 is a little bit of a contrast in a way. We've gone from the Gita, which is so deep and so old, and then we go to something that is relatively, lightweight, skimming over the surface of energy and consciousness, but nonetheless doing a valuable job along the way because it woke up so many people. And that is the Celestine Prophecy, James Redfield.
Yes, and I chose that book and I was almost not going to, because it is so lightweight. It is a very light read, and as now I wouldn't find it as profound, I think, if I read it. However, there's something to be said for these fantasy books, these fancy light books, because they allow you to drop out of that deep mind. When I'm reading the Gita, I'm engaged and really looking at the words and understanding. When you read something like that, the Celestine Prophecy, you can take a little bit of the story, and then as you're in your life, you can daydream with it and you can engage it. And so it becomes more than just what's written on the page. It kind of unfolds in your life. So I think it's very important to have those light reads.
Yes. Oh, I agree with you. You said that you remember a shared Celestine experience that was particularly powerful. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. I love that one. Those powerful experiences that remain vivid years and years later are profound. This was, we were walking, and I mentioned in the writing that we were in this redwood forest, the two of us walking, looking for a place that we could kind of get out of where everybody else was, because it was a very crowded day. And we wanted to find a place to meditate because we could just feel the sacredness and the energy of this place. And we've been told there was alien energies and other, consciousness. And we were like very excited to tap in, but we couldn't find a private place. And so we just started walking in meditation, where you just mindfulness, where you just breathing and noticing everything, all your senses. And suddenly there was a shimmering, a light around a certain tree. And we both saw it at the same time. We both were like, wow, look at that. And it kind of drew us in that direction. It was down at a branch in the trail. So we started walking down that particular trail. And then it just seemed to keep getting brighter and more trees were lighting up. And we just kind of followed. It's like we were seeing the energy around the trees, but they were almost inviting us in. And we ended up in this very private little clearing where it's just perfect to sit down and meditate. This crowded place, nobody was in this one particular area. And we had the most profound meditation. And, when you slip into that kind of a consciousness, you are radiating, everything around you kind of stops. You're in that moment experience, and it's like everything opens up. It's like you've gone through a energy portal or something where everything is different, and you can just have some profound experiences, and there's could be people all around you and you wouldn't even notice.
Yes.
That's what it was.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Book number 3, The Power of Now, another one that comes up time and time again, Eckhart Toller.
Yeah, that was a good one. I listened on tape. I listened with I was at those years traveling with my kids quite a bit to and from school and soccer games and whatnot. And in the busyness of work and kids and family, my morning meditations were so important to me. And yet I would leave them as soon as I'd leave the meditation, close the door, I was off on my day. And I found when I listened to this book, it was a reminder. It brought what I did in the morning meditation into my daily activity, because now I was thinking about these topics, the pain body and the what does this all really mean? This busyness that we're doing. This one and the next book were the 2 books that kind of repositioned me into a spiritual path, because I was so focused on family and on my business career. I had a very nice professional career, accounting and working in the environment, and I was headed in that direction. But these books anchored me back to what fed my soul.
Did you read them around about the same time?
I read the other one, which is the Conversations with God. I read that one first, and then I read this one right after. And are we talking about the Conversation with God next?
Yes.
That one still was very profound for me, in that I was having my own conversations with God at the time. I was having my own deep meditations and these profound epiphanies and experiences that I was journaling and writing, and I felt I was alone. I thought I was the only one having this, so I kept it very secret and quiet, and, would write journal after journal. And when I read this book, it was like, it was a permission. It was like, oh my gosh, there's others like this. I wanted to sit down and write him real quick and say, oh, I do that too. It's like, no,
you didn't want to write to him and say, hey, you, that's my God, not yours.
Right. And it's interesting, because when you listen to his writings, or a few others that have been connected to that inner voice, it sounds a lot like your own inner voice. Some of the ways it speaks, it's very similar, of kind of a very light but profound wisdom. And so you're tapping into something when it's kind of light. Sometimes you back and read your journals on these writings, and like you're like, who wrote that? It doesn't sound like your voice or have all your filters.
Yeah. So how old were your children around the time you read these?
Oh gosh. They were probably junior high. Yeah, about junior high school. I had to think of where I was driving in the car with Eckhart Tolle.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing how you can always remember where you are? I mean, I read something a while back saying that if you want to learn something, play it on a tape while you are walking, because the movement anchors it for you. And I then started listening to a lot of Audible books while I was taking walks. And I now find that I can remember, if I go to a certain place, I can remember the exact book I was reading.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's a wonderful reminder, Sandie. Something that Jean Houston used to really encourage is the intelligence in the body and movement, because I'm so used to sitting down and meditating. That's my strength. I love to, but to actually physically get up and move, you bring all this other intelligence out inside, and you think in different ways moving.
Yeah. And that's something that her husband was very much engaged in, wasn't he? Yeah. In fact, I think I read one of his books long before I discovered Jude. And that was all about movement. Yeah. So number 5, Shankara's Crest Jewel of Discrimination by Adi Shankara.
Well, I say Adi Shankara.
Never heard of this one, and this is the first time it's been mentioned in the club. So tell us about it.
I was surprised davidji didn't bring this one up in his 10 best, but maybe it's where I was again when I read it. This book is really one of my most favorite books on this list so far. It is Adi Shankara was an 8th century sage from India. He was a young boy who they say was the Mozart of Vedanta, of the Vedic language or Vedic knowledge. And he, and as a young boy, he learned all this oral tradition, all these Vedas and knowledge, the Upanishads or the Gita, all these come from this body of knowledge, this wisdom. And he was so profound with it. He was actually teaching some of the sages and the gurus as when he was a young boy. And what I found with the book is he was asking questions or answering questions that when I was 50 years old reading this book, I was just starting to have these questions about reality. You know, if nothing matters because it's all illusion, and yet in my life everything matters, and how I live, I want to live a beautiful life. I want to be helping and supporting others, and what I do in life is so important. How can you bring these two to an understanding between nothing matters and everything matters? And that's, you open his book and that's exactly what he's starting to talk about, is these levels of consciousness and how things matter differently at different levels of consciousness. And I just was thrilled. And then I'd sit there and I'd read this book and look around at my own son's teenagers and realize that he was their age, well, he was writing these profound things.
Yeah. Your book number 6 is a favorite of mine, and I do not often laugh aloud at a book. I don't often laugh aloud at movies. I might have a silent chuckle, but this particular book, it had me rolling up at times throughout it. A Mythic Life, Jean Houston, and my God, what a storyteller she is.
What a amazing experience to be mentored by this woman who you listen to these stories. When I read the stories now, I can hear her voice telling these stories. And she grew up on the sound stages with her father, who was a writer for Bob Hope, and so she grew up with this beautiful drama. And when she tells a story, she just steps into it and leads you full embodied into the story. I think that's what attracted me most to Jean, was her presence is so rich and full right where she is in the moment, just a force, an energy. And so her stories, it is funny. It's amazing because, again, I think you can step into the story very easily and experience some of the funny things that she did in her life as a child with her father, the escapades.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And he also, didn't he write for Groucho Marx as well?
He did. Well, that he wrote the Who's on First for Abbott and Costello.
Ah, okay.
And I just can imagine she has some wonderful stories about her mother being from Italian and her father from Texas, and how that changed her way of cooking and the fusion between Texas and Italian cooking.
Yeah, what an amazing lady she is. And this is, you've read many of her books, but this is your favorite.
It is, because it truly is a taste of Jean and her stories.
So did you read the book while you were being mentored with Jean or before?
No, actually after I was mentored.
Okay. So a different kind of experience. Yeah. So what was it like being mentored by her?
Oh, she is an incredible lady. Again, the stories. I have to say that the first time I met her, I had taken her course online, one of her early courses online. And so I figured I already knew what she was teaching. And I was on my way to a course with Deepak Chopra that I have to be recertified every year. So I went to go and see, and I already know, I've known Deepak for so many years. I know what he's teaching. So I was really just going to the course to be with my girlfriends and just enjoy a meditation retreat weekend. And Jean walked in the room and onto the stage, and my jaw just dropped. My whole body just went like into shock. This presence, this energy, there was an immediate connection. I was sitting, I remember exactly where I was sitting, on the floor in the front. And when she reads to an audience or talks to the audience, she keys in on a few people. She taught me this later on how to work an audience and how she really talks. And at that point, she was talking to me. And so here I am, just, I couldn't put two words together. I was just so mesmerized by this woman and her energy. And at the time in my life, I was deeply into meditation and very much into letting people experience this bliss that you get when you meditate. Who cares about coming back down to earth? I just want to be out there and om and fly. And here's this woman who is so in her body and about what can we do to make a world that works? How can we be practical and take these gifts you have and do something important here? And I guess that's where my soul had brought me to, in that moment, was to find, yes, I can reach really high and go fly with the angels, but now it's time to do something. And here the woman was, it was like, okay, immediate connection. Like, I need that energy because I need to do something. And it's important I do it now. That was, she was amazing.
And she wasn't just a, a kind of at distance mentor, was she? You traveled with her. She was very much in your life at the time.
And she still is.
Still is.
A soft way. Yes. I feel very close to her. She means a lot. To see her move a whole audience and bring them to a special place. And each person, it's all about human potential. And it's what I love too, is seeing people realize they are so much more than they think they are. And those little dreams and things that they hear in their mind are really openings to something profound that can happen for them or unfold for them. And she had a way of, reaching all different types of people, whether it's me who like to meditate and fly, or somebody that's really into business and structure, or politicians, or she just could really understand and connect with her audience and then reach them.
And a great title, because it really has been a mythic life. I mean, she was Margaret Mead's protege. She's just done so many things. I mean, she was advisor to the Clintons. She's traveled all over the world to keep, what was it she was doing? Something to with preserving stories for indigenous cultures or something.
She was also stepping into the cultures and understanding what makes them creative, what makes them work that's different than other cultures. Like, you think about she used to tell me stories about how the landscape really influences a culture. So you're up in Alaska or where snow is covering, you have to be able to really visualize a lot more about what you're trying to do. So when they're looking at a project, they're going into it from a visualization. Whereas if you're in Africa, movement and drums and that's how they solve their challenges, is they actually embody it more and physically move. So it's fascinating to see different cultures, the gifts or their approach to challenges.
Yeah, because few people look at those kinds of things.
No, her whole life is about studying how creativity works, what makes a high creative.
Yeah. Yes, well, I'm glad Jean is still with us, and I hope we hear a lot more from her.
Yes.
So book number 7, Penny Pierce, who was on this show just a few months back. And this was the first book I read of hers and really enjoyed, Frequency. It's one of the best books I've read. So tell us when you came across this and how it impacted you.
So Frequency was, my kids were probably in high school by then. Maybe one of them was gone by then. But this was a book when I really started understanding energy and how it affected in my life, the frequencies, the different levels of consciousness based on frequency. and it spoke to me. Again, the right information at the right time for the work I was doing. So I found some of the practices that she does in her book very interesting. There's one in particular where she takes you just through meditation into the body and down into the quantum level. And then from there, you kind of expand into everything. It's interesting to me how everything is inside. We can reach the universe by going deeply inside. Mm-hmm. And she gives a very beautiful example of how to do that. I like, again, my background is very much this meditation, just reach that bliss and get into that energy. And I like someone that is very scientific, like a Deepak Chopra or Penny Pierce, who can put a structure around what I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing. Yeah. And give me the words that then I can communicate with this.
Yeah. So you kind of know it at a different level.
Right. There's a deep knowing. And then when you see it, you're like, aha, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
I couldn't have said it before I read it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. In your written descriptions, you said that in revisiting this book, you're struck at how relevant her message is for the challenges we're collectively facing today. Do you have a copy of it in front of you? If you do, would you like to read that?
I do not have it in front of me. I should have. Sorry.
Okay, I'll read it then. She said, the only thing we can do now is to stabilize our own personal vibration by not indulging in the seduction of fear, which is flooding the world and trying to saturate the air we breathe. The important work is to keep our bodies, emotions, and minds vibrating in harmony with our souls and spiritual values. Now, she wrote that book, 2008, 7, something like that. Very prescient, very prescient. And this is something too that you do, and it's something that you, in your teachings, you know, it's helping people keep their bodies and their minds vibrating in harmony with their souls and spiritual values.
And I think it's so important right now, especially with, we are so bombarded with the collective fear or unknown or just the energies that are around us right now. And we need to, the only way we're going to bring in these new energies to change is to start with inside ourselves. So we need to find that space to raise our frequency, to bring in that joy and that gratitude and that love. And when you start radiating that out, then your environment around you starts changing. Then we start reaching other people, because we can't do it alone. I think that's where we all know or recognizing that we're in a time of the collective rising, not just the individual.
Yeah.
And so we need to broadcast that, hey, I'm here and I'm radiating this energy. I'm ready. I want to connect with you and you.
Book number 8, Spontaneous Evolution, Bruce Lipton and Steve Bierman.
I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to see Steve Bierman as the Swami Beyond Ananda.
I have not. I've spent many hours interviewing Bruce, but never Steve.
I've met Bruce as well. He's wonderful. But Steve, I was actually at a conference with Gene Houston, and Steve was there. He was attending as well, he and his wife. And he is really quite a joy to be around when he's in this alter ego as Swami Beyond Ananda. But his background is the social science part of this book. And then Bruce Lipton, of course, is the biologist. And reading this book, again, it's that idea of what's going on at the micro level inside of us is so reflected outside of us. And we you know, as above, so below. One of the fun stories I like about this, I guess in my work, I'm often trying to tell people they're exactly perfect where they are. So, you know, I've been meditating for 30 years, 40 years, whatever it is. And somebody comes up and they're a new meditator and they're like, oh, I wish I'd meditated as long as you have. And I'm like, no, you are so perfect because you've been doing other work like that practical level and engaging. And now you're coming together with me meditating and we're opening up some new doors. When I read this book, Bruce and Steve talk about an experiment that was done. I don't know if you remember this. It was done in a carnival where the whole town was guessing the weight of a certain cow. And if they guessed the right weight, they won the cow, I guess, or a prize. But nobody guessed the exact weight, but the average of everybody was the exact weight. And I love
how interesting.
Isn't that great?
Mm.
And that's how the collective works. It's like nobody has the exact truth, but together with everything, we see it. We have the whole truth.
Yeah, ain't that the truth? So, number 9, of course, he had to come into it.
Of course.
Deepak Chopra, The Spontaneous Fulfillment of Desire.
And I love this one. I do love some of his others as well. I think I love this one because it was on tape as well, and he actually reads it. So you actually get to have him in your back pocket, and he leads you through some of these meditations and processes. It's also a book that I use often in my own work, some of the topics, because they're so, he is just a way of simplifying this idea, this concept of spirituality and what's happening, synchronicity and all of that, into some very practical ways to experience it on a daily basis. 7 days, right? He's always got 7 days of success, 7 days of
magic number.
Right.
Yeah.
This book was patterned after a course I took with him years before. It was called Synchro Destiny, and it took us through the whole, what he later then made a book out of. That's a very good course.
He's very prolific, isn't he?
Yes, he and Jean both are interesting, though. A lot of their writings come directly after a course or something. Jean in particular, a lot of her books are different exercises or processes you can do. But Deepak's, he'll when you see him with a new topic, something he's just discovered, he is like a little boy on stage. I've seen him come in and a full classroom of 200 people, and everybody's queued up to do the PowerPoints, and he has a whole bunch of new slides because he just discovered something on the plane right there, and he just throws everybody into confusion, says, no, we got to do this, and he's excited, and then he writes a book.
Yeah. Well, you need that refreshment, don't you, all the time? You need to have something new to stay engaged, especially when you've been at it as long as he has. Yeah.
And it's important to find with him what he's on right now, because I think it gets a little stale if you're with some of the older, and he's retelling you about something he's already. I love to be at his passion when he's that excitement.
Well, unfortunately, that's, part of the way things are. I know so many teachers who don't want to go back and teach their first courses anymore. What they don't and can't feel is the newness with which people come to it. It's the first time for the students, but it's not for them, and they can't teach it in the same way, and that's a shame.
I'm starting to experience that myself with some of my older that we just keep, and it's remembering that spiral, like you said. There's always something new in everything you experience, even if it's the same book coming back to you.
Yeah, for sure.
You just have to be curious and have a little wonder, because it's like seeing the rose that we've always seen. We never see the rose anymore, right? Same thing. Open up and see something new. So
book number 10 is actually a piece of fiction, The Summer House by Jude Devereaux. So what made you turn to a piece of fiction as one of your 10? And what was it about this piece of fiction that grabbed you enough to be here?
So once again, it's like the Celestine Prophecy. I think we need that space to daydream and to imagine. And these books fiction does it for me. I love fiction. I read quite a bit. I'm going to tell you another quick story about Jean. When I mentored with her, it was a weekly phone call, and every week she would give me more readings. And sometimes there were books like this thick on the cosmos, or the fabric of the cosmos, or, and they were all fascinating, wonderful stories, but it would take me a year to read a book like that. And the next week she'd have 2 more for me. And every once in a while she would throw in 2 or 3 fiction books, you know, A Wrinkle in Time once, or other books. And it was, I think I get as much out of those abilities, those to daydream, as I do out of some of those thick books, because then my mind can start jumping quantum leaps from those concepts you feed with the thick books, can then expand, and when you fantasize and imagine. This one in particular was about time travel, and I read it. I was young, still with kids, and it was an escape reading this book. And it struck me because there were certain things in my life, you know, we all have regrets. We wish we took that direction instead of this direction. And in this book, it took 3 women who were who had ended up in their lives someplace they didn't want to be, and they'd met when they were in their 18s or 21, when they had the full life in front of them, and then they come back together in their 40s, and they're all completely, their housewives are completely different, and they wonder what would have happened. And this is a time travel about what would have happened if they were able to make one switch, one change in their path. And it really brought it home that if we change one thing, even that worst thing that we're so embarrassed or so don't like in our life, if we change that, it changes everything. And are we willing to change everything? Or has everything that I've done in my past really made me who I am today? And, you know, again, you can just say these words, and we've heard these words before, but when I read this book, I experienced it. I was like, yeah, I feel that. And I wouldn't change one thing. And I, as I talk to people and mentor people, you know, I embrace every experience is what I teach, because there's value in everything.
You said that this is a powerful message when exploring human potential, a message that invites us to bring our focus to the strengths and gifts we have now to meet this moment, and recognize that all those past life experiences were the grit that makes the pearl, which is a good reminder for us to have, you know, because it is so easy to dismiss some of the things, the achievements, some of the things that you've done, and wish you'd done something else instead.
Yeah. Because, you know, that's the juice of life, all the experiences, right?
Yeah.
And I think I chose, you can see the variety of books. I mean, everything from the Gita to the Summer House, there's a lot of different books. And I think I did this because, again, I think it's more important who you are as you grow through these books. It's that alchemy of the two coming together, the reader and the book at the right time.
Yes.
That's important on our journey. And so it's, you know, I could put, you know, as I'm sitting here thinking, I didn't put any of Brian Greene's books in there about the cosmos, as Jean told me, and that was quite a read as well, important. But no, you need some lightness in there too.
So what are you reading now?
Oh my, what am I reading now? You know, I've got all those books from Jean on my desk still, because actually, to tell you the truth, right now we are packing because we're about to move. And in the packing, I have to go through the books and see which ones I want to get rid of. And so this is really hard, because as I pick the books up, I want to read the next one. So I'm between books right now, trying to figure out which ones I want to read and save. And some of those books I didn't finish with Jean are haunting me. I've got to go back and read them.
Yeah. Did you make a promise? Did you sign a contract in blood?
I know, I'm waiting for her to read them to me.
Yes.
You know,
that would be much better, wouldn't it? If you could just listen to them while you're driving.
There's two people that I remember that I just can sit and listen to, reading stories to me or telling me stories. One of them, of course, is Jean Houston, and the other is Stuart Pierce. Do you remember
Stuart? Really?
And he almost made my list here too. His book.
Which one?
Alchemy of Voice.
Ah, yeah, that's a good book.
Beautiful book. It's a beautiful book. And when I had a session with Stuart once, you introduced me years ago, and I had a session with him, and he wanted to meet Jean at the time, and he was talking to me about Jean, but he was saying Shakespeare to me and telling these stories. And then he'd ask me to say something. And I was like, no, I don't want to talk. I was there for a voice lesson with him. I didn't want to talk. I just want to keep hearing him talk.
Yeah. And it's interesting going back to what you said about Jean and, you know, the not so much the culture, but the topography of the, you know, the land that we're living on and how that influences us. Stuart's book, The Alchemy of Voice, was the first place that I understood that it also influences the way we speak.
Yes.
You know, I've often wondered, how is it that the German accent, you know, it's so guttural, and then you've got the Spanish and the Italians that are so kind of flowing and romantic and quite different. And he said, well, look at the topography, look at the mountain peaks, you know, in Germany, and then you look at, you don't see so many mountains in Italy, and there are some, of course, but mostly you've got, you know, the Mediterranean and the flowing of the ocean and everything else. And I thought, yeah, makes sense.
You know, it shows again how connected we are to our extended body, to the world around us, because you know, and you know, we say that the idea of whether we created this reality, we created the place we live in, or the place we lived in created us. You know, there's that blurred line in consciousness.
Yeah. And it is interesting, the love we develop. I mean, you know, even if we grew up in a really inhospitable place, I mean, I can't imagine anybody wanting to live in Minneapolis in the winter. It's so darn cold, you know, why would anybody, but the people who grew up there, you know, they wouldn't live anywhere else. And I can't understand that, but we develop this attachment, you know, the roots, the place that formed us, you know, and that in that environment, you know, we grew and learned so much and developed, and somehow that steeps into the ground, I imagine.
You know, another thing that really struck me with Stuart Pierce is the creation of the languages that we have now, how they're built on concepts and very in the mind about understanding. Whereas the first languages like Sanskrit, which I like to refer to a lot in my work, were more of a heart-based and emotional energy, a connection with the spirituality and with God. And so there's so much more power, archetypal power in the language that has that energy with it than our mind language, our words. And if you read, I believe in Alchemy of Voice, he talks about how we're losing the vowels in our words. We're shrinking down the words to be, and it seems like the energy is in the vowel.
Yeah, I remember reading years ago, and I don't know how true this is. This was a non-fiction book, and I don't remember the author, but they were saying that we were all telepathic until we developed language. And in developing language, we lost our telepathy. You know, we could do it with our minds, but then we started making words, and that took the attention off of the right side of the brain onto the left side of the brain. And, you know, we kind of moved in that direction away from telepathy.
I think we've lost a lot of our abilities. It's interesting in some of the esoteric studies that I do. You look at the everyday person would think that we are the most advanced civilization now. And yet when you do the deeper research in pre-Atlantean or go even further back, the civilization could have been very high, and then we had that dark ages, and now we're just kind of creeping our way back up. And in that fall, we lost things like telepathy. We lost things that all these abilities that we have, because I don't think we've lost anything inside. We just have forgotten how to use them or forgotten how to touch them.
Yeah. And that's something that you help guide people back to in your work. Tell us a little bit about, you know, you've got two great programs that, for me, having experienced a lot of different people's work and seminars and programs and things, pretty stand out, because they are original, and they do go very, very deep. And there's, I couldn't necessarily articulate, take it apart, what the magic seed is in there, but there's something in them that makes them quite profound. And that's your wisdom gatherings and your adventures in consciousness. Tell us the difference between the two.
So Adventures in Consciousness is a starting point for everyone. It's an ability to take these journeys into these different levels of ourself, into what I call the meta realms. And we focus on different parts of ourself, the physical, the psychological, the spiritual, and then eventually the mythic side of ourselves. And as we go into these journeys, I think that missing secret thing that you were wondering, it's the individual going in. It's you or Sharon or whoever's going in on the journey is being opened up and finding the magic that's inside of themselves. And I'm just holding the space and giving them a little bit of a direction, and then saying, yes, that's the perfect place to go. Or yes, my favorite thing is when somebody says, you mean I really can do that? And it's like this opening up for them when they realize that the answer that they've been looking for is really something so simple for them, or so, maybe not simple, but so known to them already. And they just have to trust themselves. So Adventures in Consciousness begins to give you a taste of these different levels of yourself. We do it in large groups, and we also rely on the collective. We weave together as a group, and the group is going into the same journey. And actually, in the share time that we do, we often find, you might have a focus of what you're trying to solve or something you're working on. And as you listen to everybody else's, it starts making your focus. It's like, I want that one. Yes, I want that one. They all kind of feed together. And then when we go in the journey, we get that amplified experience. When we do a wisdom gathering, it's more of a group mentoring. It's a smaller group. It's a maximum 14 people. And we take this group over a period of time through all these different layers of themselves. And then I have a rough map of where we're going, but the group informs it. As we start journeying, I'm connecting to what I call the entelechy, which is a process I learned from Jean. The entelechy is your higher self. So I have an entelechy, each of us have an entelechy. But when you come together as a group, you have an entelechy of the whole group as well. So I'm connecting in with that, and I might be thinking we're going in this direction, but it can change. It depends on the group.
Now, I know you don't really like to talk about this very much, but I'm going to out you. You have done some pretty amazing things. You have worked with people individually and gone into the meta realm with them. And you have helped people who've had very serious illnesses move beyond that. How are you doing that? What are you doing?
So this again starts back with Jean. I did some work before with a Brazilian healer, and I would fly with angels and do different things. But then it was always, I wasn't owning the energy myself and saying it was me doing any of the work. I was saying, oh, I'm being the angels are working through me or whatever. When I started working with Jean, she opens up what I call that mythic self, right? These stories we have of ourselves that we don't like to share with people because, for me, I would see myself walking with a staff and in a robe and people following me. That was this mythic story I had about myself. I have a friend that she saw herself sitting on a throne of books, like Athena. And we have these images that we've put together, maybe from myths or whatever, but we identify with them and they're parts of ourselves, but we often keep it out there. Jean helped me step into my myth, into who I am. And when you allow it, when you step into your myth, you start having access to abilities that you've before closed down and say, no, that's for the gods, or that's for, somebody else. What I found with working with some people that were very ill, close to me, was a beautiful gift. It was a process of learning how to first connect with that person on an energetic in the meta realm. So I had to do some work on myself to change memories in the past, to actually change time in the past, which is another process I teach, because we hold the memories, time inside of us. And when we can shift how we think about things, we can actually shift the reality now. So I would change things now so that I could then relate at a deep level with the person I wanted to work with. And then I started working with dimensions. And this is something Jean and I explored together. She helped me in this direction, where I would connect with a possible me in another dimension. You think about all the things that interest us in this life, and you think about the idea that there's multiple dimensions. We can't even fathom how many dimensions there are, and we exist in all these different dimensions. And so there's got to be in a dimension. In this case, I was looking at quantum healing, what it would be like if we could do surgery at the quantum level. That was a concept that came to me. And so I reached into this dimensions and found a part of me that knew how to do quantum surgery. And I spent time connecting with this other part of me while I was working on this particular person who was in a coma, who had pancreatic cancer, was given 3 months to live. And we were, it wasn't even operable. There wasn't any chance at all. This was 10 years ago. And working with this quantum surgery, he was in a coma, and he would develop a leak on a different organ where it would just start. They couldn't figure out why he was starting to have these different problems. And I was able to hold a template of his optimal body, energetic body, and connect that template to his body that was in front of me that was not had disease. And then something would happen. Something would change and shift. It's like the information, the coding, everything is energy and information at the quantum level. And that information and coding that is the proper energy or the correct energy would influence the diseased energy. And especially, I think, since he was in a coma, so his mind wasn't changing it. It was able to shift because I held that energy for him to resonate towards. I have to say, any of these things that sound fantastical, it's when we can step into a model or a structure that I can personally believe, viscerally believe, I can make it a reality. It's not convincing myself. I have to really believe it. And so when I reach into my mythic stories of who I am and see a pathway towards this opening of this story of a quantum healing and surgery, this is something that resonates with me, that, wow, that's a possibility. And then I bring it closer, it becomes a probability. And then I'm able to use it and access it because it's now a structure that has come into me and I can use. You might find a different way of working and healing with energy that is slightly different, but it fits your mythology and your story. And you just have to open up to that possibility.
And that person's still alive.
And that person's 10 years later, still alive and amazing.
No trace of cancer?
No trace of cancer. Some physical from the coma. He had a little bit of impairments with his body, but he's a miracle. And I have to also admit, I'll take a lot of credit for that, but I'm also going to admit that we had somebody that was a Catholic nun and somebody else that was Christian. And so we had like the spirituality, the Catholic nun and the Christian, all of us were getting it from all angles to help this person. So it takes all of us, the collective.
So tell us about your Adventures in Consciousness programs. I mean, if anybody wanted to join one, what's the structure of them?
So we're about to start another series. We have four pillars. I call them pillars. The first pillar is is physical pillar. Is learning the gifts that we have within our physical body, within our extended environment, the world around us, and with our energetic body. So we're taking these journeys. I like to call them journeys instead of just meditations, because it is such a deeper experience, and how we hold the experience is really the value we'll get out of it as well, right? If we move into the idea that we're journeying into these places, and that it is a reality when we're in these meta realms, we can access and pull more information in that will affect us here in this reality. So we do these journeys. There's 13 topics for each pillar, and we do it over 26 weeks. And then we move into the psychology, and then we'll move into the spiritual, and then the mythic. To join, it's a weekly, once a week. Right now I have a group going on Tuesdays. The next group will be going on Thursdays. And we meet, we talk for a few minutes to check in. We form, it's a group, it's, under 20 people right now in each group. So we check in, we kind of form our group, and then we go into our journey around a certain topic. This last one, we are doing the elementals of creation. We think about the myths of creation. They're very similar, how we have, again, I like Sanskrit words. So we have Akasha, which is space, pure potential. And we have Vayu, which is air, which is the movement of our thoughts and wind. We have Tejas, which is fire with the transformation. We have Jala, which is water, which is the connection, bringing together. And then we have Prithvi, earth, which is the form and the structure. And so we do, through this journey, we go through these different elementals, both outside of us, the wind, the sun, the earth, the planet, and inside of us, the breath that comes in, and the tissues that form our body. And you just start seeing how they're connected, and this movement, and how we tend to create and hold on to something. And the magic is when we can release it again and create anew. And so it's just going through this journey and experiencing it, and then having your own epiphanies and your own ahas. That's Adventures in Consciousness.
And you also have on your website free experiences of this, because you created a countdown to a new beginning series of Adventures in Consciousness. Tell us a little bit about that, and how anyone who's interested in experiencing one of your adventures can go along and do so. So
that I created that as we came into the new year, countdown to a new beginning. And my thought was, we were so, if you remember back to December, we were so caught up in waiting for the new year to come, and how hard 2020 was. And we were all inundated by what we've been carrying for this last year, these energies and these feelings. And so we took 12 journeys that I have, that I've shared with people that are on my website. Each one, the first 4 deal with time past. And it's not just time 2020, it's the ability to move into time like it's a territory, and experience shifts and changes in the time that you thought was already history, right? So we spend four sessions on time past, and then we spend 4 sessions on time present, because once we've acknowledged what's in the past, and then taken what's valuable for me to carry forward and released what we don't need, then we sit in our power in the present with all the energy of this moment, and we start dreaming what we really want. What do we want to create? And for me, this is the most powerful thing for us to transform this world that we're in right now, is to really look at what we want. We spend so much time on dealing with what we have to and reacting. It's time to really step into. So we spend 4 days experiencing this in the moment, and then we move into the future, and we start experiencing or picking a journey of what the future is going to look like. And it's interesting, again, if you think about dimensional realities, there's no time. Time all exists right now in this moment. And all these different dimensions, we tend to move on this arrow of time, because this beautiful mind has structured life so we can move and not go crazy. We kind of move along this path, and it understands, allows us to have a logic to it. But we don't realize that we can choose the dimension, the reality that we want to move into or move forward on in this path. you think about how we tend to move in a spectrum of realities. At one point we're at work and we're thinking our career, and the next point we're at home and thinking about our love life, or thinking, you have all these different focuses, and at any particular moment brings you in a different dimension of who you are. And when you can start choosing the dimension, the spectrum that you want to be in, and moving with more conscious awareness, then you're not swayed and pushed by all this other energy around us, other things that knock us off. So it's a wonderful, taste of what I'm doing. I really like those 12 sessions, and I have them up there for free. So I hope you enjoy them.
It's a very generous taste of the experience. And if anybody wants that, you can go to Jennifer's site. You will not find it just there. You have to sign up for Jennifer's newsletter, which, you're not going to get spammed. But once you sign up, then a purple bar will appear at the top of the page, and you will have access to that. And honestly, that is a fabulous way of having some wonderful experiences. All you're going to invest in it is a bit of time and a bit of energy. About that, Jennifer, is there anything that you want to share?
I'd like to say, you said all we need to do is invest some time in that.
But there is no time.
Yeah, true. That's true. It's all about time. But I'd also like to say that it's, even if you don't do that, the important thing everybody needs right now, is to invest some time in themselves. And this is rich time for yourself to deepen and nourish your soul,
Before we leave, Jennifer, can you tell us about your new adventure that's starting in June? Sorry, in May. You're actually starting it in May.
It's like, what else am I doing? In May, I have a new show on Om Times called It's the Adventures in Consciousness, the Conversation. And I'm very excited and nervous. So hopefully all of you will come. So I'll be very comfortable. But we're going to have conversations like this. We will have different writers and teachers on. And we will also have, so part of it will be talking about a topic on consciousness, whether it's, for example, one of them that's intriguing me right now is, do we exercise free will? Or just to contemplate our free will and how we use that. And you think of that from different layers of consciousness, the idea that, yeah, I go out and get my coffee when I want it. I've got free will. Or is that habit? Is that not really free will? We're just stuck in these patterns and habits. And when we bring the light of consciousness and awareness, that's when we really are stepping into free will. So having conversations where we go deeper on a topic like that. And then the last half of the show, it's going to be an hour-long show. We will do a journey, a taste of a adventure in consciousness, leaving you with a tool to be able to take onto your own meditations. So yeah, that starts May 4th, Tuesday, and every other Tuesday.
So from, before Jean came into your life, BJ, and after AJ, when you were doing all of your learning and studying and researching and journeying and adventuring, to stepping into your dharma, you're suddenly becoming a very, very busy lady.
And part of this, I think some of you who know me, I've been doing a lot with the place called Damanhur in Italy. It's a spiritual community in Italy. And it's just a wonderful place where people who are interested in this topic actually live it. They live spirituality. They surround themselves with it, and with research, understanding consciousness from a level of research. And I always laugh when you're with anybody from Damanhur, your life seems to speed up very quickly. It seems like, and with Jean, it seems anybody that's doing this kind of important work, there's a density about it that seems to slow down time, and you speed up, if that makes sense. It's like, okay, now I'm working on more burners here. It's time to really get something done.
Yeah. And knowing you so well, I would also say that when anyone is mentored by you, the same thing happens.
Oh, you get into that flow. Once you start, the whole universe, the whole world's behind you. once you are moving in the right direction being where your soul wants to go.
Well, Jennifer, good luck. Good luck with the new show. Good luck with the new adventures in consciousness and everything else you're doing. It's been a real treat to speak with you and to hear about the books that meant the most to you on your journey. So thank you, everybody. And if you want to experience more of Jennifer and her work, and if you go to her website, you'll also find there's a lot of Damanhur events and classes that are being hosted by Jennifer. And that is jenniferevanko.com, EVANKO. You've got the spelling on the newsletter. Thank you for joining us. If you want to be the first to be notified of these events or to see the videos, you can join the No BS Spiritual Book Club. It's got a private Facebook group. You can also sign up on the website at sedgbeer.com underneath the No BS Spiritual Book Club tab. I'll be back again next week. Till then, thank you. And it's goodbye from me.
Thank you.